So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the CoSTAR Screen Lab webinar on spatial audio for enhanced interaction with visual assets in virtual production. My name is Caroline Harkin, and I'm the Project Officer for CoSTAR Screen Lab, and I'll be your facilitator this morning. So I'm just going to quickly run through some housekeeping and the agenda. So once you have joined the webinar, it's been recorded today, and it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel after the event. So you can revisit it and for others to access who can't make it today. So because of this, you'll have joined with your cameras off and your microphones muted. And we're going to keep this setting during the presentations. There'll be an opportunity for questions and answers and discussions after the presentations. So please feel free to use the Q&A box to post questions and comments. And you're also welcome to post in there anonymously. The agenda for today's webinar is on the screen. So there's lots to get through, but we'll strive to get through as many of the questions and answers as quickly as possible at the end of the presentations. This session is all about giving you the details you need to apply for our latest spatial audio R&D funding call. And to do that today, I'm joined by a fantastic panel who are going to introduce themselves. So folks, take it away.
Thanks, Caroline. Professor Frank Lyons. I'm co-director of the CoSTAR Screen Lab and Associate Dean of Research and Innovation at Ulster University.
Okay.
Hiya, I'm Ricky Campbell. I am the creative technologist here at Screen Lab, and I am a generalist working across Unreal Engine and immersive audio and video applications.
Hi, my name's Will Saunders. I am the creative head of the CoSTAR National Lab, and I jointly manage this piloting program that I hope you're all going to apply for today.
Hi, I'm Kylie. I'm a senior producer at the National Lab, and we work alongside Screen Lab, just supporting their calls and activity. Thank you.
So that's our lovely panel for today. They're going to be on hand during the question and answer session to specifically answer any questions on the technical element and creative scope of the call. So without further ado, that's the housekeeping finished, and I'm now going to hand you over to both Frank and Ricky to kick off the main presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, and we'll try and get to the main business of the webinar just as soon as we can. But just to give you a wee bit of context, if you've seen webinars, CoSTAR webinars before, you'll be familiar with some of this. But for those of you who haven't, CoSTAR is a national R&D network for creative technologies. There are 5 labs spaced around the UK, National Lab in University of London, Real Time Lab in Dundee, the Light Lab at Wakefield, and the Foresight Lab again based in London. And we are the Screen Lab. We're based in Belfast at Studio Ulster. Next slide, please, Caroline. Yeah, Studio Ulster is a world-leading virtual production facility in Northern Ireland, based in Belfast Harbour Studios. In terms of our CoSTAR Screen Lab, the core team is led by Professor Declan Keeney, who's the director of the CoSTAR Screen Lab, but also the CEO of Studio Ulster Limited, the company that was established to run the main Studio Ulster facility. I've already introduced myself, Frank Lyons. You've also got Karen Fleming and Paul Moore. Next slide, please, Caroline. We just wanted to give you some brief information about recent project highlights, again, that would sort of tie in with what we're going to speak about today. Next slide, please, Caroline. And over to you, Ricky.
Ricky, mute.
Ricky, you're on mute.
Sorry. One of the first projects from last year was ideate projects from E&C, and we with several different applicants in, we had some really cool groundbreaking projects, but this one here is pretty good, the Spitfire virtual production shoot, where we brought an actual full-sized Spitfire into VP3 in Studio Ulster. And it was a really cool project because there was a collaboration between different sort of stakeholders. For example, Sync Imaging was working with that. Obviously, Studio Ulster, myself, and Yellow Design, and Michael Glade led that production. And it was a mixture of drone footage with creating plates, creating XR content in Unreal Engine, and doing a virtual production shoot with the with the Spitfire in VP3. And it was really some great footage at the end of it, and the outcomes were excellent. Next slide, please, Caroline. Another project from last year, which was our PPP project last year, was from HoloAge, and this was actually really cool. I worked on this one as well, and this basically was us streaming a live broadcast of Carmen opera from the Coliseum in London, but it wasn't just a normal live broadcast. It was taking a spatial audio, a multi-channel audio from one location to another, and being able to distribute that in different methods. So we had two streaming options. We had one which was in the main VP3 scene, where we had a D&B immersive soundscape system set up, which was bringing in the multi-channel audio from the London Coliseum. But we also had in our computer lab a binaural experience using headsets, and we were able to actually use different sort of mixing technologies to make sure we could multi-stream at the same time with different types of channel content. And both those projects were actually really fantastic, and we got some great outcomes from both of those. And of course, one of the big things from last year from the PPP project is we used 5G technology to capture and transmit and stream a lot of that data. Next slide, please. And back to you, Frank.
Thank you, Ricky. Yeah, at the core of what we do in the CoSTAR Screen Lab is the whole idea of inclusion. EDI is a very high on our list of priorities. We've also been able to multi-purpose the use of the Screen Lab space, or VP3, as Ricky referred to it as. And earlier this year, we hosted a live performance which included virtual production, which incorporated musicians with all sorts of abilities, disabilities, to perform on stage. But we also then ran a research symposium with presentations from some of the UK and Europe's leading artists, technologies, and disability-led organisations. Next slide, please, Caroline. Then most recently in May, we ran the launch event for the AI for Creativity scheme, which is part of the CoSTAR suite of initiatives. And this was led by Animotive, and we looked at AI-driven motion capture without full body suits using VR headsets. It was very well attended, lots of interest, lots of really interesting and challenging questions that we strove to try and address with practical labs. So there was a lot of hands-on activities. And as I say, the key thing was AI as a production partner with a focus on meaningful pipeline integration. And we did drift into areas of ethics and ownership in collaboration with our partners at the AI Collaboration Centre, which is led by Ulster University. Next slide, please, Caroline. And over to you, Ricky.
Okay, so what do we have in terms of facilities and capabilities at Screen Lab and in Studio Ulster? So primarily, we have a virtual production studio which we can use for research and development, and that's an LED wall and also a ceiling and a floor. This is really cool because it gives you opportunity to experience different lighting scenarios in virtual production, as well as using assets in different ways. I'm not going to go through all these because there's quite a lot, but we've got the industry standard Brompton processors, Ficon tracking with Technoprops crowns. We've got good camera technology. We've got our own dolly and jib systems now. We do have remote controlled PTZ cameras, which we've used in some shoots already in Studio Ulster. We have a really, really well equipped computer lab that has, the really, really good PCs. Now, obviously technology changes, but these PCs are top spec PCs with good graphics cards and good processors. They have been used for some AI workflows recently as well. And we also do have our own customized portable 5G private network, which we can use remotely pretty much anywhere, license permitting. Next slide, please, Caroline. In terms of the audio capabilities, and this is an ever-expanding list, and we can't fit everything into the 1 or 2 slides, but in a nutshell, we have a portable mobile 8-way horizontal ambisonic speaker system, which is a outline Vega system, and is all powered by PowerSoft amps, which are Dante enabled. This is a good system for moving about. and for trying different scenarios and different situations. We have an edit suite now, again with an 8-way fixed ambisonic speaker installation, which can be configurable in whatever way you want. We have access to a sonable ICO ambisonic point source speaker, which again, state-of-the-art, really good technology, and I'm sure there's some really cool things you can do with that. There's other things like we have modular audio peripherals. What that means is we've got different types of interfaces. We've got different licenses for all the major DAWs, Pro Tools, Logic, all usual suspects. We've got a few ambisonic microphones. We've got stereo pairs. We've got mono mic, got everything we need really microphone wise. And we've got a capacity for recording around 36 to 64 channels in and for monitoring out. So we do have a really well equipped audio spec, which is ever expanding, and there are more bits and pieces that we can add to that. And that's me. Back to you, Frank.
Thanks, Ricky. And I just want to cover some of the expertise that you'll have access to if you're successful in this competition. You've just heard from Ricky. We have a dedicated screen and creative technologist in the form of Ricky, who basically lives in the CoSTAR Screen Lab. He's there 24/7. But we've also got an extensive list of academic co-investigators that you will have the opportunity to work with depending on your specific area of interest. We've got co-investigators. I think some of them are on this call. We've also got 2 postdoctoral research associates who work with us, and they cover areas. You know, we have a lot of expertise in spatial audio. We've got 5 and 6G wireless engineers who work with us, and we've got that expertise in virtual production, motion capture, VFX, AI in the form of colleagues from the AI Collaboration Centre, and also expertise in robotics and, as I've already mentioned, in inclusive creative practice. Next slide, please, Caroline. And again, over to you, Ricky.
Mute. Ricky.
Sorry, apologies, me again. So what we're looking for in this PPP call, what Frank was saying about, we want this as broad as possible. So we want you to come up with the ideas, but as it says here, it's not limited to these. So performer and actor interaction. Spatial audio cues for performers interacting with invisible virtual elements and or avatars. Diegetic sound fields to improve spatial awareness in mixed reality stages, and mocap as a means of situating performers. And of course, that's not just limited to those. You may have other ideas, but those are just sort of starting points. Over to you, Frank.
Yeah, and again, just to reinforce the point that Ricky has already made, we made this call in terms of the information we've already supplied as broad as possible. But you know, we want you to come forward with the challenges, and we want to work collaboratively with you to find solutions to those challenges. So it's really, really important to keep stating that this is not an exclusive list of areas that we want to look at. This is just some of the challenges that had appeared to us from working on productions and so on more recently. So again, some other areas like spatial audio as a user interface layer. So using 3D audio cues to represent asset positions and states and hierarchy. Audio-based navigation of complex 3D scenes, and also use the sonification of metadata. So that could be lighting states, camera frustums, and object states. Then this whole idea of collective and social interaction using shared spatial sound fields that can coordinate group attention, using optical tracking for positional and rotational identification, the idea of networked audiences receiving personalized yet synchronized cues, and also audio as a mediator of collective visual engagement. Next slide, please, Caroline. And also, we've had a couple of questions about this, actually, you know, the whole idea of development of tooling and middleware. So the development of plugins for real-time engines and enabling spatial audio interaction mapping, APIs connecting scene graphs to audio engines, integration with tracking systems and stage telemetry, and spatial metadata for post-production. Anything else you want to add here, Ricky? I mean, it's a fairly extensive list that we've on those 3 slides.
Extensive list. Yeah, it's a fairly extensive list, and again, just reiterating this, it's not limiting to any of that. It's really up to you whenever you're applying to bring whatever innovation you want to the application.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Caroline. And I think over to you. So just speaking about then, what's on offer? CoSTAR support for this call offers a combination of access to equipment and facilities that we've outlined, research expertise that we've spoken about, and also cash funding to support the project costs. And for this specific call, up to 2 projects will be awarded cash funding of up to 35k per project. And those successful projects will have the opportunity to access equipment and facilities. So that'll be in the form of up to 2 intensive 1-week development sprints at the CoSTAR Screen Lab. This will include the onboarding and orientation on the required equipment by our technical team. And you can find more details on that on the Screen Lab's full specification page on the website. And in terms of the research expertise, depending on your particular area of focus and interest, we will choose the academic colleagues who will guide and collaborate with you during the tenancy. We'll also be able to provide up to 10 days of ad hoc support outside of the actual sprint windows over the project's total duration. And again, you can find out more about the Screen Lab's expertise on the dedicated page on the website. And in terms of cash funding, as I mentioned, up to 35k per project is available to contribute to costs in undertaking the project. And again, please refer to the eligible costs section in the applicant's guidance. And I know Kylie and Will are going to talk a bit more about that particular detail. So really, we've already tried this approach in terms of like the access to the facilities. How long do you need? What kind of interaction do you need? Both as part of the sprint and outside of the sprint. We've tried and tested it on numerous PPP projects last year, as well as some of those ID program projects. So we know that this approach works really, really well and can deliver really innovative outcomes. Next slide, please, Caroline. And over to you, Caroline.
Okay, so for your information, we have some key dates. The project, as you know, or the application system is now open. It closes on Wednesday, the 19th of August, so you have approximately 3 more weeks to get your applications in and fully completed. The projects can last up to about 3 months in duration, and they must begin after the 11th of November, and they'll have to end no later than the 2nd of March. You'll be informed in writing of the outcome within 8 weeks of the closing date. So now, without further ado, we're going to head over to the question and answer box. Thanks to both Frank and Ricky for their input there. And we'll start taking some questions at this point, and then we'll go over to Will and Kylie for some presentations on the application process and the financials. So let's see.
There was one, Caroline, just about PPP, the acronym, and I think Kieran's just responded to that. Thank you.
Okay, so is the lead applicant, sorry, these messages are just dinging in on top of the questions. Is the lead applicant expected to assemble the technical team themselves, or can the co-investors take a hands-on on delivery roles, specifically at the application stage? Do we need named specialists individually, or can this be indicated more broadly?
I can take that one, Caroline. So, I mean, either approach, if you've already got a developed relationship with, a co-investigator, that's absolutely fine. You can name them in your application, or you specifically would like to develop that working relationship. Or if it's just an area of expertise, you can be more vague about that. Maybe just identify the particular area of expertise that you might like to access. So we're not being overly prescriptive on that particular approach.
So next question, how mobile is the mobile equipment?
Okay.
I'll take that one. Okay, so at the minute the mobile equipment can be moved anywhere within Studio Ulster facility basically, and on the outside of Studio Ulster, but we cannot take it off-site just for insurance reasons. But there is quite a lot of space and there's quite a lot of things you can do all around the facility. Obviously you need to get prior access first, but that's about as mobile as it is at the minute. And that may or may not change, but it's movable enough, but we just can't take it off site.
The next question, how much autonomy do we have in terms of using facilities and equipment? Do we need to have the creative technologists at all times when using the equipment?
Can I respond to that one first, Caroline?
Yeah.
I think it's important to make it clear that you know, when you go online, you will see Studio Ulster, this huge world-leading facility with multiple stages, including a huge 3 different size virtual production stages, a mocap stage, a 3D and 4D scanning stage. It's important to state that this project is focused on access to the smaller virtual production stage, which is in itself quite large, but that does have a lot of the other capabilities built in. If you need specific access to something like the motion capture stage, there are costs that are specified on the website that you can then build into your application. The access to the full Studio Ulster facility does not come as automatic if you're successful. You've got to be very specific if you need access to anything outside of the virtual production 3, as we call it. So it's really important to state that. Rick, is there anything else you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, so in terms of autonomy and using equipment and whether or not I need to be with you, I mean, obviously, I will be there to support in any capacity you require, but there could be some autonomy depending on your level of expertise. There is going to be an onboarding for most of the equipment and the space that you will be using. So there will be a sense of if you need me, yes, I'll be on hand. But if you can do stuff without me, and as long as you are happy enough and you have been onboarded, yeah, that's okay. To limit some things that you won't be able to do, for example, any networking changes, stuff like that there that require Studio Ulster systems team to set up. But any of our own CoSTAR equipment, as long as you've been onboarded, and if you don't need me, yes, that should be okay. And I will be on hand to help throughout the duration of your project.
Okay, so next question. Do we need to book room, facilities, equipment in advance? And if so, how much lead time?
I think you can probably answer that one, Caroline.
The simple answer would be we need as much lead time as possible because we're managing a number of projects at the same time. So we need at the very least a couple of weeks notice in order to get things scheduled in and to see what's available. So you can't just sort of decide one day you want to come in the next day because that's highly unlikely to happen. So essentially as much lead time as possible. At the very minimum, I would say 2 weeks.
And I would like to back up that as well when it comes to any equipment that you need to use as part of the CoSTAR set, that we would need a good lead time because some of that equipment will probably need prepped in advance. So we need to make sure we've got enough time, but also it is a commercial facility, just to reiterate that the VP3 is shared with us. So that's the virtual production studio. So as much lead time as possible is really important, especially in the facility, because we just need to make sure we get you in whenever you need to be.
Could I just add to that? Obviously, this is once selected, right, for the Screen Lab team. Once they're selected, we don't need that level of detail in the application. But if you have an idea of when you'd like to come in the lab and you want to put it in your application, I would definitely encourage you to do so, just so the Screen Lab have even more advanced warning. Is that correct, Caroline and Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kayla.
Okay, so what are the most useful techniques and latest developments for supporting partially or fully sighted, challenged, blind with this technology?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. And, you know, I think it's sufficient for me to say that we would expect people coming forward with project ideas to absolutely know what are the most useful techniques and latest developments and really how to build on what already exists in a very innovative way. otherwise we could spend the next sort of hour and a half going through that particular. So again, the expectation is if you're coming forward with a project idea, you absolutely know where the cutting edge is in that particular area. And the idea is that you would then propose a project to find solutions that would take that cutting edge further forward.
Okay, thanks you, Frank. Are you only looking for projects that are using spatial sound in service of 3D visual assets, e.g. are projects not set in a game engine or 3D environment, but which do use spatial audio eligible?
Okay.
We everything's on the table. There's no sort of boundary. Whatever you come up with, really there really isn't a limit to it whatsoever. Yes, okay, of course you can use game engines, but you can use anything really, and we're not limiting that whatsoever. So if you've got an innovative audio and spatial, or an innovative project in spatial audio, yeah, absolutely, it's definitely within the confines of this project.
Is the opportunity only interested in interaction with visual assets, or can the novel innovation remain solely in the sound is experienced? And how, sorry, the sound is experienced?
Yeah, again, and it sort of relates to Ricky's response to the last question. We are really interested in this call in terms of how sound interacts with visual assets, but that interaction can be, you know, in the broadest sense. So we're really not interested in sound only projects. We want you to explore the widest possible area of interaction between sound and visual.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So in terms of outputs, are you looking for original technology to be developed, or is new implements of existing technology suitable? Is a live performance or theatre piece suitable as an output for this project if it is using novel approach with technology?
So yes, again, we've made it clear throughout the webinar so far that we're looking for innovation here. So it can be in the form of a live performance or a theatre piece, as long as you're ticking the key boxes of the interaction of audio and visual. So it can be in live performance, or it can be using fixed assets.
Okay, so I have one more question here. Commercial potential and route to market. Can the thing you bring to market be a live performance, or are you exclusively looking for tech products?
Be a live performance.
Okay, that seems to be all the questions we have in there for the moment. So I'm going to hand over now to Will and Kylie to go through the application process and financials. Thank you.
Caroline, there were a few more questions that came in there. Just
are they showing at the top somewhere?
They are indeed.
We can take them at the end.
Yeah,
if we get time.
Good.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, we'll come back to the additional questions. Thanks, everyone. I will share our presentation now, just going on to how to apply and some of the details around your application process. Just one moment. Sorry, everyone. Hoping you can all see that. A lot of the information that Will and I are going to present here is in the applicant guidance pack, which is on the website with this call, but we just wanted to highlight a few key points that where people tend to have quite a few questions. So let's just jump into the application process. One of the things is, while the questions have been provided in a PDF form on the website for you to have a look at in advance, when you go to submit, you do need to click through to Submittable to complete your application. So please use the Submittable platform to fill out your application. And just to let you know that if you're applying with a team, multiple people can access Submittable, and you can answer one question, someone can respond to the other questions. If you have technical expertise or different people, they can all jump into the application platform at once. So there are a couple of additional documents you are required to submit at the time of application. You've got 10 questions, but the 2 documents that you will have to download the templates, fill them in and re-upload are a budget and a project plan. So they're both very high level documents, particularly the project plan, but it's just to give us some idea of your timeline. And to that question earlier about giving advance warning, if you want to use the full amount of days in the labs, not everybody does, and when you would like to use it, just a bit of overview of what you're planning. And then we'll talk a little bit further about how to complete your budget, and we've got a video to describe that. Can you include more detail than the application form allows? What this is really referring to is uploading decks, slide decks, and other presentation materials, links to specific things. Ideally, we have a lot of applications. Every application is read by more than 2 assessors, and it's very difficult for them to download and compare a whole lot of documents. So ideally, put all your information into the application form, because we cannot guarantee other decks and presentations will be read. We also don't want you to spend months and months preparing for this. So please put all the information into the application questions, except for your budget and project plan. And just to let you know that we do have some support bursaries. If you have any challenges, neurodiversity or other issues, sight or other problems where it's quite difficult to navigate our assessment, our application platform. So please have a look at those support bursaries. They are also available for future reference. If you are selected and you need support when coming into the lab, you can apply for those support bursaries. So there are 2 bursaries, one to help you with your application if you need that help based on disability or health condition or access need, and the other is then when you if you are successful when you're applying for the lab. And the email is there. The link is in the on the website. Can you use AI in your application? Just to say that we follow the UKRA policy, and there is a link for you to have a look at that. In general, we're not marking, our assessors are not, scoring you badly for using AI. These days at the moment, we can all tell typically when it has been used, but we understand people might use it for support. We ask you for editing and things, but it's all on the content, the quality, that we can see your idea, focus on that, and it will be fine whether you do or don't use AI. It's all in responding very specifically to the questions. And if you use it for editing purposes or something like that, it's not an issue. But we can very generally tell when an application has been fully done by AI and hasn't really looked at the specifics of the core questions. Can I speak to someone from the team? We do need to provide, equal information to all applicants. So you can, if you have a very specific question, but please put your questions via the costar.pilots@rhul.ac.uk email, and we will distribute it to the right person. And then if you do need to speak to someone further to that, but typically most of your questions can be responded to by email. And generally we can't answer questions like, is this a good idea? That is starting to borderline into assessing and giving personal preference from the team. So it just has to be really technical and specific to your application. That's it, and I'll hand over to Will. He's going to talk more about who is eligible and a bit more about completing your application.
Thanks, Kylie. Just to reiterate, everything I'm about to tell you is in the application pack. So please download the pack, absorb it, and then you can, get yourself ready to apply. The other thing that Kylie said there was about email and contacting us. The last call that closed on the 31st, I think it was, last week, 21st, we got emails on the day of. You can imagine the challenge in getting those responded to. So please don't leave everything to the last minute, okay? Let's move on. Eligibility. What sorts of companies and organisations are able to apply? So CoSTAR has been designed for creative economy growth. We exist to support UK-based companies. So next slide. Freelancers. Can freelancers apply? Freelancers can apply. They can be part of bids, but you have to be a UK registered company if you are going to lead. So that means sole traders are not eligible to lead applicants. Freelancers who are limited companies are. Okay. As the company applying, are there limits for us on use of freelancers and subcontractors? Creative industries organisations tend to use a lot of subcontractors and freelancers. We're putting a 75% limit on total budget. If that is a problem, come back to us if you're shortlisted, and we can work with you at that point. Can a research organisation apply for this call? A research organisation would be the same as a sole trader. You can be included, but you cannot lead an application. It must be a UK registered company leading these applications. Next slide, please. Current projects that are already running be considered for funding, or are you looking for new projects to fund? Right. It's unlikely that an existing project will have a brilliantly well-defined R&D problem. It can happen, but in experience, it's not often the case. Please don't treat this as project completion funding. It is not, okay? It is an R&D fund. Does the applicant company need to have been registered as a UK company for a certain period? No, it doesn't, right? We've had people in previous lives register and create companies in order to apply. Assessors won't be looking to judge you on how long you've had a company formed. Can companies of any size apply for PPP calls? Yes, you can. We align behind, I think this is a DCMS, or UKRI categorization of company. It's very important we understand the size of your company, and I'll explain why in a minute. But most companies that apply to us are generally either micro or small and medium-sized companies. Next slide. Subsidy control. Okay, subsidy control is an important consideration in what we do now, because CoSTAR funding falls within a new legislative piece of criteria due to Brexit, and subsidy control regimes are a part of what we have to take into account. That means if you have received previous grants or publicly funded kind of innovation from any area, we ask that you declare that. The ceiling on it affecting any company that applies is somewhere in the region of £3 million. So it tends not to be a factor here, but under kind of guidance and legislation, we have to register companies who are in receipt of more than £100,000 from us. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are technical criteria that apply in all kinds of innovation grants that you would apply for. To be eligible, you need to tell us that you meet all 5 R&D criteria, and you must be deemed to be innovative. The R&D criteria are outlined in the next slide. I'm not going to go into them in great detail. If you've applied elsewhere for Innovate or UKI grants, you're kind of used to doing this sort of thing, right? So you need to say, yes, this is an R&D project, and yes, we are innovative. Next slide. So there are the qualifying criteria for both. Okay, next slide. Is my research industrial research or experimental development? This is very important because the size of grant that you're likely to receive and your subsidy ratio is affected by what you declare, whether you are industrial research or experimental development. The definitions that we define are there, and I would only add to this, the majority of projects that would go through CoSTAR are by and large industrial research. And the reason for that, if you go to the next slide, is that most CoSTAR work, and CoSTAR is an infrastructure grant, okay? So the money that we're making available exists to test the infrastructure CoSTAR is making available. That infrastructure is our lab space, our lab technologies, and our researchers. Those are test or simulation environments. So most CoSTAR research that goes through our books with companies apply is industrial research, okay? Next slide, please. How is the value of the PPP grant calculated, and what percentage of my eligible costs am I able to claim back? This is why declaring the size of your company is important, okay? So generally, you can get 70% as a small company, 60% medium, up to 50% if you're large. But that is boosted by an additional 15% if you're deemed to qualify for what is referred to as effective collaboration. Now, effective collaboration is signed off by each lab individually. So it would be Screen Lab in this instance who would look at the applications and then decide if any of the projects that have applied would qualify as effective collaboration. The barrier to qualify is generally quite low, right? It's likely a lot of your applications would qualify as effective collaboration, partly because you're very close to us. When you are shortlisted, you will end up in a dialogue with us where we will go through your application in more detail and help you with this part of the process. So it will be things like, you know, a jointly defined project scope. Well, you can tell from the webinar, right? That's something that's definitely probably going to happen. Probably going to happen because the way in which you're going to have to determine how you're going to use the lab space and what you're going to do and putting a team together. Meaningful contributions from all partners, shared project risks, and most importantly, if in the contract, the university reserves the right to publish research results, which is also a qualifying criteria in effective collaboration. But at the point at which you're shortlisted, we will have this conversation with you, so it's very clear to you whether or not the project is effective collaboration. Next slide. Companies are asked to make a contribution. We are publicly funded. We have to show a return on investment and the fact that what we're doing is valuable and important. Generally, those kind of company contributions are generally in kind. They can be cash, but we tend to see quite a lot of things like in-kind labour, subsidised use of materials. Sometimes people tell us, like, if this was a commercial rate, I'd charge you this much for my staff, but as it's R&D, I'll charge this much for my staffing. And we tend to see in-kind contributions manifested in that way. Again, it's something that all kind of R&D funders generally expect to see now. Next slide. Let's conclude by sharing with you a little bit of information on how to best complete the budget template that Kylie described earlier and that you'll find in your application pack.
In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to complete the PPP budget template. This is the format we'll ask all companies to use when applying, so that your project is compliant with subsidy control regulations. This budget template is used to calculate your total eligible project costs, the maximum funding, cash grant you could receive, your minimum required company contribution, and the value of subsidy that we must record for transparency and compliance purposes. It is essential that the template is completed accurately, truthfully, and in full, as the information is used to determine funding eligibility, subsidy level, and reporting obligations under UK subsidy rules. I'll go step by step, showing you exactly how to fill this in as we go. First, we'll stop at the top left of the template where you'll enter your project costs. All costs must sit within the correct categories. You'll see the following sections: labour, materials, capital usage or equipment hire, subcontractors, travel and subsistence, any other costs, and overheads. You should input your costs under each of these headings, adding your unit cost, quantity, and then the total is calculated automatically by the template. I'll show you an example of one that's been populated here. For labour costs, you should only include staff working directly on the project. Enter their day rate and the number of days that they'll spend on the project to calculate the total. Next up, materials. These must be directly used for developing your project. For example, prototyping materials or software licenses could be claimed for here. Capital usage. For equipment, you should only include usage or hire costs. You should not include the full purchase price of any equipment. please make sure that you're only including equipment or venue requirements that are not included in the selected lab provision. I've included an example of how to work out capital usage in this comment here for reference. Subcontractors. If you are using subcontractors on your project, please include them here. These should be specialist services that you can't deliver internally, and they must be UK-based. Your total subcontractor value should not exceed more than 75% of your total project value. Travel and subsistence. This should only include essential project-related travel, and please abide by the regulations for reasonable costs that are provided as part of your applicant guidance. For any other costs, you can fill out under the other costs section on the normal template. And for overheads, you will see that these are already calculated automatically at 20% of the labour costs you've populated above, so you don't need to fill this out. Once you've entered your project company costs, the next step is to scroll down to the lab selection. Here you'll select which CoSTAR lab you plan to work with, and then enter the number of days that you expect to use the lab. So I'll enter Live Lab here, and say I'll be using it for 5 days. That will calculate your total. Next up, you need to complete your project declarations. So you'll need to select your project classification, whether it is industrial or experimental, your company size, for example, micro or small, medium or large, and whether your project meets the definition of effective collaboration. You can find more information about all of the definitions for these in your applicant guidance pack. This is really important because it determines how much funding your project can receive. Once you've filled in those fields, the template will do the rest for you. It will automatically calculate your total project costs, including lab costs, the maximum intervention rate based on your answers, and the maximum cash grant available for you to request as part of this call. So you'll see here, based on the answers I've provided, the maximum intervention rate is 85% of the total project costs. Therefore, the maximum cash grant available to me is just under £41,000. Therefore, your minimum required company contribution would be 15% of the total project costs, which comes to just under £9,000. This is a required commitment from the company towards the project's activity and can be provided as cash, staff time on the project, materials, or use of internal equipment. This is why it's so important that all the sections above are completed accurately, as the funding calculations depend directly on the information you provide. Before submitting, just make sure that all of your costs are in the correct categories, you've selected the correct lab and number of days, and that your project classification and company details are accurate. And that's it. Once completed, this template gives us a fully compliant breakdown of your project costs and funding request. We know that this can be all detailed, so our team will be able to support you through the process if needed, and all definitions and guidance are included in your applicant pack. Thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing your applications.
So I just want to reiterate again, all of this is for application guidance only, right? At the point at which you are either shortlisted or even, you know, we want to potentially award you, this process will be repeated so that we can go through this again and give you maximum support in working out budget, helping you with effective collaboration, helping you understand how you can deliver on your company contribution. All right, so please don't be put off by any of this or think that the moment you put all this information into the template, that's it, that's the end of the process. It won't. All of this is only to help us in assessing your idea and understanding the sort of project we're going to get from you. Okay, we will help you again when you get to the latter part of this process. So nothing I hope we've outlined here would put you off from applying. We're here to help you. We genuinely want the best companies with the very best ideas, and we'll help you in as many different ways as we possibly can. So please do apply, and that's it from Kylie and myself.
Okay, thanks to Will and Kylie for that. There are another couple of questions here in the question and answer box, so I'll just get through as many of those as we can. Is Ulster the only CoSTAR studio available, or is future studio a possibility too?
I can take that one. Sorry, go ahead.
Good, Frank.
Obviously, this is a Screen Lab call, but we do not rule out collaboration. So, for instance, at Screen Lab, we've just delivered a project that was originally approved and funded by the National Lab. So the whole idea of the network is about cross-lab collaboration. So we can definitely look at that. I think. Okay, that's all fine, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I would say you'd have to make a very good case as to why you're not working in Screen Lab.
Yeah.
Please bear in mind the application does cover things like travel and travel costs, and we'd need to understand this probably from a technology stack perspective, i.e., what is it Screen Lab don't have that you need access to, or something along those lines. So yes, we can accommodate requests, but each call is housed within a lab for good reason, right? So you're going to have to make a very good case as to why you can't work with that lab.
I think the majority of what we've seen is companies collaborating with the main lab, going into the main lab for a set number of days, but to prep for that, they may want to go to their lab that's closer to them just to do a test before they go up to the main labs. And so it might be one day versus, the majority of your days spent in your main lab and working with the expertise of that lab because they've designed the call and they have the expertise on hand.
Okay, thank you. Can we build on a previously funded R&D sprint that has delivered a defined slice of a project using its outcomes and learnings to inform and extend the next phase of development?
Will, do you want to take that one? I think you touched on that already.
I think in this instance, this sounds as if you've done an R&D project and you're looking to either do another work package or something like that. I would only look at this and go, as long as you can make the case and you can 100% guarantee that what you're doing is R&D and you're not looking for project completion funding for something that has previously been funded, it's legit and it's on the table. I think it would have to be a really good case, though. As in, it's not often a good look to continuously fund R&D things on a publicly fund continuously, iterating projects. So you'd have to make a good case for it, but it's not ineligible in this instance, I would argue.
Okay, that seems to be all the questions that are in the Q&A box at the moment, because I noticed that you have answered directly a number of them. So if that is everything and there aren't any more incoming.
Sorry, Caroline, could I just elaborate on one thing? Will, could you elaborate on IP, on who owns the IP? Because we've covered what IP is, but really often we get questions on IP ownership.
So the creative industries and the majority of creative industries growth is predicated on companies developing and then owning intellectual property. That is part of and it's integral to what we do. So CoSTAR does not take intellectual property in the ideas that companies rock up with. So you come with something, we help you develop it, and then you leave with your IP. That's generally the case with almost all the projects we do. In some instances, there may be a case where technology may end up being jointly developed, right? So researchers may have original research and ideas they bring to your project. In that instance, we would flag well in advance where we think that might be a case. Majority of instances, we want companies to come with IP and leave with their IP increased in value.
Thank you. Sorry, Caroline, that was the only one I thought might benefit from some clarity. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so we're coming up on 11 a.m. and we'll have to wrap it up there. So thank you all for joining us and thank you all for your questions. And I'd also like to say a massive thank you to the panel today. We look forward to receiving your applications, and as a quick reminder, I have put up on the screen there the key dates for your diary, and the closing date for the call and the submission is the 19th of August. So if you please do look through the full application pack. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you,
Caroline.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.